Friends, look no further. Everything you need, it is already in you. I'm Ashley White, the host of Joy on the Journey podcast, a weekly podcast all about defining, finding, and maintaining joy on the journey of life. I have promised weekly interviews with guests that will leave you inspired, encouraged, and ready to take on the world. And this week's guest, y'all, get ready. I'm already fired up just from our conversation to start the podcast. But let me not wait any further. This, my dear friends, is Miss Raquel Bobb.
Hi.
She is a full-time accountant and CEO of Inner Gr8ness, which focuses on inspiring and motivating others to live their best lives. Sis, thank you for joining the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
So, let's not waste any time. We start every podcast by asking guests to give their definition of joy. So, if you had to think about it, how would you define joy?
I would define joy as being able to wake up every morning and living out my purpose.
Mm. So, you've already identified your purpose.
Yes, I have.
How did you get to that place?
It wasn't easy. It was a lot of tests, trials, tribulations, God speaking to me being disobedient, me having to fast, pray, go through different things to get where I am today. It was definitely a journey.
Mm. And what about in those moments when you hadn't identified or been obedient to the purpose that God had placed on your life?
It was hard. It was hard, and it was dark times. Like, because I've always been an intuitive person and a person that had a relationship with God. I've been in relationship with God since I was 6. So every time I feel like God is trying to take me to the next level and elevate me, he gives me a trial. And sometimes it's for the world to see, and sometimes he protects me from the world, and it's just so I can see.
Mm-hmm. And what did you do in those seasons to persevere?
Oh, it was a lot of crying. It
Mm.
was a lot of praying, and it was journaling. Journaling, it was helped me see my truth in the person I looked at every day in the mirror. Because I believe that when you can't heal what you don't reveal, so it was taking those time to actually write and see myself for what it was. Because it's no point in lying to me.
Mm.
And when I write, I can't write lies. It's easy for people to tell lies, but you can't write them. It's like a mental thing. So, like writing out and seeing everything for what it was when I wrote it, that's how I was able to get through those moments and actually see what God was trying to tell me.
What did you use to validate the truth?
God. I use God and what I knew he was saying about me. Because in this generation, we have social media. And everybody looks to, I've done it. We look for outside validation to invalidate what God has already told us. But before we were put on this earth, before we were born, God gave us all a purpose. And he gave us a plan. Jeremiah 29:11 is one of my favorite scriptures for that reason. Because he says he knows the plans that he has for us. And, to prosper us and give us hope in the future. Like, when I used to say that was my favorite scripture, I wasn't really living it. Because anytime I wanted to do something or be something great, I was asking a lot of people. When God had already, because God speaks to me mostly through songs in my dreams.
Okay.
So when I'm asleep, God comes and talks. And so, like, starting Inner Gr8ness, he's like, I've been told you to do that. He was like, and you looking on the outside, he's like, but you have a story to tell. And you have a life to live, and you got people to reach. He's like, I don't matter if it doesn't look like this or what you thought it was supposed to look like. You're supposed to look like who you're supposed to look like so you can touch the people that I have anointed and attached to you.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting. One is impactful that we spend time discerning the voice of God.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's so key especially as women, as Christians, that we hear clearly from God and not our friends, because sometimes our friends mean really well.
They do. They
Our
do.
parents mean really well,
And they do.
but it's not God.
It's not God.
But unless we know Him, and unless we're able to clearly identify a good thing from a God thing,
Come on now.
then we won't be able to move in the right direction of our purpose.
No, that's true. And God had to isolate me.
Talk about that.
So it was 2018, I had got a promotion on my job.
Okay.
Moved me to Dallas. That was the roughest time ever because I had a business going on, but I chose paycheck over my purpose. I chased the check. I chased the check. I had a whole business going, talking about how God is my sponsor and how He's all these great things to me, and was doing speaking engagement, was mentoring, going to LA, being on these panels with, people you see in Hollywood. And it was just one, I was shrinking myself because I didn't feel like I was ready.
Wow.
In those seasons. But then when the job gave me the promotion, it was like, oh, we're moving you to Dallas. I was like, okay, let's go. But when I got there, all hell broke loose. It was the loneliest time because I got to see who was really my friend, who I was giving too much, who I had been codependent on, because I had dealt with some abandonment issues since my adolescent years from when my parents got a divorce, which changed me. So I was dealing with identity crisis because I would attach myself to people because I felt like some love was better than any. And that wasn't just in terms of a platonic relationship. It was friends. It was with guys, the people that I would choose to date. It was everybody. I was like, oh, even if I know they want a good friend, oh, but I'll still be their friend because they're giving me some type of attention. And so when I got to Dallas, He broke me down. I remember one night being in my apartment there, and I was like, God, if you let me make it out of Dallas, I promise I will serve you. I will tell everybody about you. I will never live for anybody else, and I will always live for you and through you and with you. Because that was the thing. I cried. I was on that floor prostrate. I was having anxiety attacks. I had never dealt with that. I was going through depression. It was just me and my dogs. That was it. And that's when He spoke to me, and he's like, are you ready to listen now?
Woo!
And I was like, huh? And so that's when I started birthing Inner Gr8ness. And yeah, He dealt with me with that. That was a real hard season. And people, to the world, I had just got a new truck. I was living in Dallas. I was getting promoted. I was to the world, I was looking like I was at the top. But on the inside, I was the lowest that I could have ever been. I was real low. That's what I talked about, how God protected me from people. Because to the world, I was whole. I was good. But on the inside, I was broken. And He didn't make me look like what I was going through.
Wow.
He protected me. Even though He was isolating me, God protected me. And I'm so grateful for that season because it evolved our relationship even more.
Whew. We're about 7 minutes into this podcast, and what you will not do is make me cry 7 minutes into this podcast. But you said so much in that story that I want to unpack.
Let's go.
Starting with chasing the check versus chasing purpose. How many times have we done that? And chasing the check, though, wasn't an easy, or was it an easy decision?
No, it wasn't an easy decision because here I am, rooted in Houston. I was involved in church. Had all my family, friends, everybody was here. And my boss came to me one day and she was just like, we have this opportunity. And it's like, oh, okay, sure, what is it? She was like, me and you're going to fly to Dallas. She's like, you're going to meet with these partners. And if they like you, she was like, this is going to be your new home. Next day, we literally hopped on the plane, went to Dallas. We did the meeting that morning. By that evening, by that afternoon, I was signing a lease for our apartment. And I was sitting there and I was just like, when I got back on that plane, I was like, what did I just do? Because in that moment, they were selling all this big stuff, these dreams, oh, you come live in Dallas, you come work for us, then you just gonna elevate, you're gonna elevate. But I was doing my business and I was really happy at that time. Like, well, so I thought, like, I was like, okay, no, I'm just doing it for fun. I'm able to touch people's lives. I'm able to give God's name, making it great. Like, I had churches buying my shirts. I had friends, family, like everywhere I go, people was wearing it and getting the message out. And I was like, okay, like this was good. But then it wasn't, because as I started settling in Dallas, it was like, no, this is a test. That was a test. And I failed it because the amount of money that they presented and the amount of money that I was making, and I didn't even call it a business then because I was just doing it because I loved it. Wow. So it really wasn't even a business. That's how I know it was my purpose, because I wasn't even calculating. So I'm like, oh, this money, oh, no brainer. And yeah, I fell to that. But it was through that situation that God showed me, because an opportunity came on the job where I had to do that same exact thing. And it changed me. Yeah. I created shirts for the company I was with for this big old like diversity event, to the point that the CEO of the company started wearing them. And everybody was like, how did you do that? How did you do that? That was just my natural creativity doing it. And I was just like, I gotta get back home. I'm like, I want to come home. And like I said, I laid on that floor and I was praying and crying. Like a few months later, the pandemic happened. And I was able to come back home, and I actually quit the job.
Everything works together.
Everything.
I want to also ask what you learned, or you mentioned in your description, you also felt an opportunity to chase the check because it gave you a chance to shrink from your purpose.
Yeah, because I'm a background person.
Okay.
I'm not even going to lie. I love helping people. I love like pushing people to the forefront and everything else. And I'm like, I don't need the accolades. I don't need the applause. Like, I'm not that person. I will serve. I have a very serving spirit. And it got to the point where God was like, no, I'm calling you. He's like, I'm not calling them. I'm not calling them. Like, I've already called them, but I need you to be called. And I need you to answer that call. But it's like, no, I ain't ready. I don't, because when you walk out in your purpose and in your truth, like that's when it's like a magnifying glass put on you. The world starts breaking you apart from your past, because everybody thinks you're supposed to be perfect when you're walking for God. When that's the truest thing from the Bible. Like, no, everybody in the Bible had things, and God just made those things perfect so they can be, so they could be used. Yeah. Yeah. And so yeah, I shrunk myself. Like, I was like, oh no, it would be like this little business. Nobody didn't have to say little. I would just say little, like, because I'm like, because I didn't want it to become this big thing.
You said it first.
Yeah, I said it first, so it can validate myself, and it can help. So when the world say it, I ain't feeling like rejecting. I'm not feeling like, oh, like they said, like I already told myself these things.
Woo.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah.
So now, recognizing that was playing yourself small, that was limiting what God was doing in your life.
It definitely limited.
How do you see yourself now?
Oh, now I see myself as this light that the world was trying to dim. Like, I had some people that would just naturally gravitate towards me, and they'd be like, you're inspiring me, like stuff that I do on the daily. And I'm like, okay, yeah. But then I had the people that was like, you think you're this, you think you that. When it's like, no, I am that. Like, because my past doesn't define me. But I had to learn how to heal from my past and accept it. Because sometimes our pasts are so drawn out. In mine, one day I'll write a book about it, but like it had a lot of pieces, a lot of moving pieces. So in order for me to stay safe, I told the good parts of the past, because one thing about my past, it still involves other people. Right. And I never want them to be seen in that light, because people wouldn't understand. Because even after all the hell I've been through, I still don't see those people in that light. It was just a part of God's plan. Right. And to really know me, you'll know that these people that have done, like even for my parents, like when they got a divorce, that changed my whole trajectory of life. Like it just did. And it was one that opened up a whole nother path from the ages of 10 years old till I was like 20. Like that whole decade, was one for the books. And I was trying to find myself again because during that time I was lost. And so it's like, yeah. So now when I see and I accepted my past, because I could never not tell my story without telling that part. But that's the part I would try to leave out because it will affect so many people. But in the end, I had to realize it was still my truth. My feelings were valid. Like how I felt through those situations that I encountered were real. Mm-hmm. And then God said to me, he was like, everything you need is already inside of you. And I was like, and that's all he kept saying. I was having a dream and I kept waking up at the same time. It was 333 every night, like at 3 in the morning. And then I'll see it on the clock. I'll see it on license plates. And I was like, okay, what is God trying to say? And he was just like, everything you need is already inside of you. And that's how Inner Gr8ness was born, because you have to look on the inside, because we all were born with our own DNA. And that's why I have the thumbprint, because nobody, not even identical twins, have the same DNA as far as the fingerprint on their body. So it's like, it's a matter of you're tapping into you. Like, the cemetery is the richest place on earth because a lot of people die with dreams filled.
Woo!
It's the richest place on earth. You go there because people die with their dreams because a matter of what, if somebody didn't validate them right, somebody rejected them, if somebody said it wasn't good enough, you know? And I had went through all of those things, but I didn't know why I went through them. And I went through them at early ages. So it's like, here I am, 20s going into my 30s, and I'm like, God, this is what you telling me to do, to use my pain for my purpose? And he was like, yes. And I was like, mm-mm. And then he was like, mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. And I started being obedient, because obedience is definitely better than sacrifice.
Yeah. So you okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, starting a business from scratch is frightening.
Ooh, it is.
Even if you are faith-filled and faith-fueled, there are just unknowns about starting a business. And as you already said, there are so many people that don't move from dream to action.
Mm-hmm. It's hard.
But you did. What was your biggest starting place?
Okay, so like I told y'all, I was in Dallas for 2 years. During this time, this business was being birthed. I didn't have the full name yet until God spoke to me in my dream and told me what the name of the business would be. And then I had already started the Raquel J, where I was going around mentoring and speaking and selling t-shirts and inspiring people, just doing what I do best. So, but I was like, I needed a rebrand, because the Raquel J was me validating myself before the world, like making me be something, like, okay, like I'm somebody, I'm this. It was more ego-based than it was God-based.
Woo!
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm telling you.
Hold on. We're going to come. Wait. Finish that sentence. We're coming back to thee versus God. Go on now. Hold on.
Yeah, like it was more ego-based than God-based. And so I had to rebrand. And what happened was, in July of 2022, I got laid off my job. And I was like, God, why? But I had been praying for something different, because I knew I was shrinking myself in the workplace. Because it's when you try to be somebody just like me, help others, and you're in corporate America, they don't accept that. And this was the first time that I was finally getting pushback. Like, and it was too much. And I'm like, God, okay, it's too much restriction there. That means I'm not on the right path that you want me to be. And so I started a 40-day fast. The first day of the fast, I lost my job. I had did my presentation that morning at 9. By 11 a.m., I was on the phone with HR, and and they was like, okay, we decided to let your department go. And I couldn't cry. I tried. I got in the car, I tried to ride around, listen to sad song. Like, I tried to cry, but I knew that was God, because it was the first day of my fast.
So now, Lola, I said I was going to fast from food, not fast from employment. That's
exactly.
That's not what I meant.
Come on now. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what made me, and I had all this stuff in the vault. It's been there. So I had no choice but to just put it out, because I'm like, God is telling me to finally put out what I've been holding in. My friends will say it all the time. It's like, Rocky, you need to go ahead and launch this business. You need to launch it. I kept giving it date after date and would not do it. And so when I got laid off my job, I did it. I had no other choice. I had to jump. And so that's how I was born. And that's what made me put the action behind the dream that has been living inside of me for Yeah, because that was 2019, 2018, 2019. Yeah, for these past 4 years. And then
These
I
past
released,
4 years.
yeah, and I released it 9822.
Thank you for being obedient. And I think even in the delay, there's still a message in that,
Mm-hmm.
that the blessing is the you were able to really fulfill
Yeah.
the test. This came with some hard trials.
Oh, it did. It
And
did.
this is better lived now.
Oh, it is because I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I understand it
Absolutely.
and I'm not running from it no more. Like I
Absolutely.
stood in my truth.
One of the tenets of inner greatness, and I share and support, is journaling. I have been an avid journaler since I was a child. Sometimes I go back and I'm like, okay, what do I do with all of these journals?
Write a book from it, girl.
Um, why have you found it to be important?
Oh, because I'm big on mental health. And consecutively for the last 7 years, I've been journaling. But like you said, as a kid, I used to have like the Lisa Frank diaries and the fuzzy ones.
Same with the little
You
kids.
the keys. I used to have all my thoughts because I was like, okay, I need to get it out because I like my sleep.
Mm.
So, and then that's also, like I said, how God speaks to me the most.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm heavy and I'm going to sleep, I can't sleep.
Gotcha.
So journaling started being as a release before I go to bed, whether good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because some days, I ain't going to lie, it hasn't been easy. Some days I literally write the date and write, Dear God, and it's nothing but tears.
Mm.
And I leave it just as that, and I still write it, Amen. Like, because I never want to be fake with myself. So it's like on the days where it's been so hard and there's nothing but tears on the paper, I allow God understands those.
Absolutely.
So when I go back and read and see how far I've come, like I see like, oh, this day was a hard day. But then maybe a week later when I wrote it or something, I was like, but you overcame because look what God did.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
so
beautiful.
it's like the journaling for me has been a record of blessings, my tests, my trials, and who I am as a person and how I evolve. So whenever the world try to make you forget, I always remember because I have that connection with God.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's beautiful. Absolutely. Do you also write down your desires and your prayers and how God has answered your prayers
Oh, for
specifically?
sure. I do.
Okay.
I get so I know people use the word manifestation and all these
Mm-hmm.
things. It's like sometimes to some people it's taboo or they feel like it's worshiping the devil and stuff. But the first time I've ever heard that word was T.D. Jakes. He had a song called Manifest, and we praise danced to it as a kid. And to me, I just feel like manifestation is where prayer and action collides.
Okay.
Like, so I write stuff down from if I want to live this place, if I want to go travel to this place, if I want this job, if I want to heal this relationship or whatever, I write it out. And I ask God. I ask God for exactly what I want. And then I say, God, this is what I want, but I want what you want from me.
Mm.
And then I leave space to go back and say, this is how he answered it. Whether he answered it the way that I wanted it or the way that he wanted it. It's still a win.
Ooh.
It's still a win.
I love that. I am adopting that today, to leave space
Hmm.
for how he answered.
Yeah, you have to. Because sometimes when I think back, especially in my younger days and when I used to write and ask for stuff, it was for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, God, I want to drive this car and I needed to be like this. But it's like, did I really need that? Could I even really afford that? Could I, you know, and then later on, he may have blessed me with something better than what I want. Like, so that's why I always leave space for God to answer the way he wants to. Because sometimes I may be asking for something that I could do in my own strength. But I found that my biggest prayers and my best prayers have been the ones that I let God do his thing. Because he does exceedingly and abundantly. And I just be sitting back like, oh, I didn't even know I should ask for that. And you gave me that anyway? Like I don't deserve that. And he's like, yes, you do. He's like, because I'm preparing you for the next step. And so, yeah, I allow space for God to do what he's going to do. And then I come back and write. And I'd be like, okay, like you blew my mind.
I love that because it is both literal and figurative.
Both.
When I tell you,
Yeah.
I don't know about y'all, but I am adopting that
Take it.
today.
Take it. Yeah.
Because
You'll see.
literally and figuratively, they both work together where I am literally leaving space and then in life leaving space.
Hmm.
God, this is my desire. But however you
However.
want to do it,
However.
show out.
Yeah. It's however,
Yeah.
whenever. Like you really have to be that open. And as I've gotten older, like I live a God life.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not a perfect life because I'm not perfect, but I live my life with God and for God
Mm-hmm.
and with Him because there's no other way. It's no other way. I've always been like one of my nicknames for my friends. They call me a ghetto Christian because they like you. You the same. You're the same person we can go everywhere with, but anywhere you go, you're gonna bring God with you. They don't care where I'm at.
Wait
Like
a minute.
our best friend. Yes, a shout out to KB. She made up that nickname. She's like ghetto Christian. That's what she called me. She called me a ghetto. I said, well, I'll be that because since we were kids, like even in middle school and elementary, I was called church girl. Like I was literally those names because I've always talked about God
Mm.
and turn anything into a song about God. Like that's just I really love that man. Like I tell people I wouldn't be this far
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't know him.
Yeah.
And that was at an early age because like when my parents' divorce happened, I ran to the church.
Mm-hmm.
I could have went anywhere else. My path could have been totally different had I went to the streets and stuff like that. But I ran to the church. Like I had a deep connection rooted and just served in the church
Mm-hmm.
every which way. With my imperfect self and not knowing how life was going to take me, I served, and kept serving. And formed some of my best friendships, my relationships, mentorships, like everything. So I know when people be like, church hurt, I'm like, that's because you put your faith in the people at the church. Like, those are still broken people that are just like you that's coming to get healed. And if you share your testimony and your truth and your story, you'll be in more alignment. But when you have these expectations for them to do all these things that you wouldn't even do for yourself,
Mm.
that's where the hurt comes from. Because it's the expectations. But those are people too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, that's a part two. Church hurt and Dylan finding healing from church hurt. That's part two.
That is.
That's part two. I have to ask, and we are coming up short on our time, but I have to ask this. You publicly share your love of travel and adventure, and you've mentioned it earlier, living a God sponsored life.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what that means to you.
Okay, so the truth behind that was that I was born in Germany. My
Okay.
daddy was military, so I was born with a passport. So I always tell people that my love for travel came in the womb. Like I was
In the
born with
womb.
I was born with a passport. Hey, that's me. Your girl loves to go. But when I was traveling and people knew my background and they was figuring out like, oh, but you only work here and you wasn't because I've been traveling since I was a kid.
Okay.
So it's like you don't have no money. Like how you doing all this other stuff? But traveling is my vice. I live for a good experience. And so that was like when Facebook and Instagram was just started. I mean, well, Facebook had started, but Instagram had really started. And I would post, and people was like, you must be on a trip with a man. You must be doing this. Like, who is your sponsor? And I used to be like, God. And they was like, no, for real. I'm like, God. So I was like, I'm going to put it on a shirt. And that's what I did. That's how I started. I put God as my sponsor. But the more that I started wearing it, making sweatsuits and hats, I started realizing that everything I have in life is because God went ahead of me. Because that's what a sponsor is. They vouch for you. Like, even when people don't even know who I am. God was like, okay, you're going to come across this girl. Her name going to be Raquel. And she's going to do this, this, and this. And you're going to give her this because I vouch for you. Because I'm sponsoring you. Like, what? Because my life, it does, to the world, it probably don't make sense. Sometimes to me, I look and I be like, God, you funny. Because I'm not supposed to be living this life that I live. But it's my life.
Yeah.
And God sponsored it. And that's how I became who I am because of him. Like, all glory forever. That's always been my story.
Yes.
Nobody else can get the glory or the credit. Nobody.
Yes.
He taught me that at a young age. At a very young age. Like, me and God has always been in tune. Like, always. So it's like so it started like people being mean and like trying to say, oh, that you can't live this if you don't have a dude paying or stuff like. It was like, no, God is my sponsor. He make ways, and that's just how it went. And so, yeah, that's how that whole business had came about. And I was selling T-shirts that said it, and people loved the messaging and the branding behind it, and they was buying it. It's like I want one, so I started selling T-shirts, and like I would make it in whatever color. I had hats, sweatshirts, jogger sets, everything. So when I was going and doing like moderations and speaking engagements with the Raquel J, I would wear it, and people, it was always a conversational starter. Because yeah, it started from somebody trying to be funny about the life that God was giving me to live, and me saying it is. And even then, I was scared to live it because it was people like that. Like, how can you do that? Like, how can you travel? Like, just like you buy purse and shoes or like to go out to eat, I buy plane tickets. Like, I like experiences.
Yeah.
And God sponsored it. Like, He is. I
God
don't
will
need a
provide.
sponsor. Yeah, He will provide. He's always
Absolutely.
have. And even if He don't provide the way that I wanted him to, or answer it, He provide in other ways. Like sometimes you think that it's monetary, but a lot of times as I've been living more and more, it's not the monetary.
Absolutely.
It's the gifts. It's Him sponsoring my peace, my sleep, my mind, my dreams, my goals, having the right people around me, the support. Like those things are all intangible things that people take for granted, and I don't, because I have a great circle behind me. I have great individuals that pour into me. So when I am low, or I try to may have those moments where I forget who I am and whose I am, they remind me so quick. They remind me so quick. And I'm so grateful for that, because I'm like, I done been broke, like real broke. Like even when I lost my job, I was like, what am I supposed to do now?
Yeah.
Because that was not a part of my plan. It was His. But so it's like everything I got, I put into this business. It's like, that's what you gonna do? I was like, yeah. And I did it. And I'm like, it was the best decision ever, because I know that God is doing some great things through Inner Gr8ness and through me. And it's all working together.
Before we close, we finish every single episode asking guests, and I can't wait to hear your answer. You are a faith walker. You believe in fasting, praying, and being obedient. So as you pray and are seeking God for a vision of where the next 5 years God is leading you, would you dare share your hope for the future, for yourself, for your business?
Okay. For myself, I hope to be married
All
and
right.
have my twins.
Okay, speak.
I'm gonna have my husband, my twins, and my house, my dreams, and my business. And with this business, it'll be more offering life coaching services, speaking on panels, writing more journals, and probably publish my book by then. But yeah, just really living for God, like using my creativity and mixing it with my spirituality, because it's definitely a connection through that, and just not because I don't like to be put in a box.
Yeah.
So I dream big and I dream even bigger.
Yes.
Like, well, no, I dream big and I pray even bigger for those things to come to pass, because, but that, like the next 5 years, that's where I see myself, because I don't want to keep being so career driven and have nobody or things to share with. And that's been the thing. I'm like, I'm 33 now, and it's like, okay, God, what's next? Like, I know this family part should be next, so my family can see and grow with me, and I can show my future kids and my spouse, like, hey, you got a great one. Like,
Yeah.
she,
Absolutely.
like she a beast. Like,
Absolutely.
so yeah, next 5 years, that's where I see it. Just my business growing, me being married, me having kids, and just doing whatever else that God is leading me to.
Absolutely, absolutely. We stand in agreement with
Yes.
her on every good thing that God has in store for her, her family, and her business. Please, please, please let the people know where they can support you
Okay.
and where they can find you.
Okay, on Instagram, my business name is Inner Gr8ness. So you can add me at INNERGR, the number 8NESS. And my website is www.innergr8ness.com. And my personal page is Rocky's Corner. So it's my side of the internet where I talk about all things about life, travel, friends, financial stuff. And that's at Rocky's Corner at ROCKIESKORNER.
I am so excited that you have come our way
No,
and
thank
shared
you,
your
Ashley.
incredible, incredible story. And I don't know if you caught it, but at the end she said, dream big, but pray even bigger. Um, Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Please drop your biggest takeaways in the comments. Follow, share, support, and come back.
Yes, please come back.
This podcast is here every single Thursday, and so until we gather again, may the Lord increase your strength, grant you more joy for the journey, and the courage to tell your story. Bye, friends.
Bye.